to today's stream. We are going to be talking about the new cards in the Streets of New Capenna Commander's Precons. I'm not going to talk about all of the cards because that would be a really long video. Technically, I realize that about 30 or so, 40 maybe % of those would be lands, so we wouldn't have to talk about them, but even if it's only like 300 cards, last time that took me a solid it was about 9 hours, so we're not going to do that this time. The lists are up online, and you can totally look at them. That works. So we're just talking about the new stuff. Like, I did incorporate also the cards from the Streets of New Capenna set that were included in the precons, because I thought that was probably relevant. I don't know. Anyway, as you can see, we've got a nice little slideshow here, and I suddenly realized that I may accidentally block this, so we're gonna do this a little differently. Let's just close this. I was gonna do it full on slideshow style, like full screen and everything, but we're not gonna do that this time, I think, because if I do, I won't block the cards, so you know what, never mind. Let's just talk about this, and then we'll go into full slideshow view. Alright. So, for starters, as far as I can tell, here are the family mechanics for each of the decks. The Bedecked Brokers, which is the white, blue, green color, they're looking at counters of all types, and this is not just +1/+1 counters. They talk about like vigilance counters, flying counters, first strike counters, life gain counters, etc. I don't know if there are any of those specifically in there, the life gain I mean, but they do have also a new type called shield counters, and a shield counter means if a creature has one, the first time that it is destroyed or takes damage, just remove the shield counter instead. So that's kind of nice. The Cabaretti Cacophony, which I now realize is underlined for some reason, cares about tokens galore. Just tokens everywhere. All kinds of tokens, any kind you could think of. We have human tokens, treasure tokens, rhino tokens, many tokens. They also want to goad creatures into attacking their opponents, and also share things with their opponents. That was extremely loud. I apologize. Simmer down there. Okay, we're good. Yeah, they have a few group hug type effects in their deck, and you'll see that coming up. The Maestro's Massacre cares about graveyards, their own and opponents, and also copying spells, particularly instants and sorceries, but not only that. Obscura Operation wants to loot, which draw, discard, and they also care a lot about dealing combat damage to a player. So they're going to have some unblockable creatures, creatures that trigger on damage dealing, etc. And then finally, the Riveteer's Rampage cares about treasure and death and attack triggers. A few enter the battlefield triggers here and there, but largely death and attack. So let's get into it here. We're just going to go straight into it. Also, at the very end, I've included, there are 8 different new cards that can only be found in set and or collector's boosters. I don't know the frequency with which they'll be around, but they are very much commander oriented, and so I wanted to include them in here, even though they're not in the precons per se. Or at all, I guess. But that's alright. I think they were made for it, so I just wanted to put them in here. Okay, so let's go to the slideshow. How exciting. Alright, moving right along into the brokers. And our first, the face card commander is Perry the Pulverizer. He is a 3/3 Rhino Soldier. When Perry enters the battlefield, put a shield counter on target creature. So we were talking about shield counters earlier. If it would be dealt damage or destroyed, remove a shield counter from it instead. So obviously once the shield counter is gone, unless you have a way to put another one on, then it'll just take the damage or be destroyed as it would. If not though, hey, if you can put another one on, then you're good to go and it gets another turn. Whenever parry attacks, target creature you control gains trample and gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of different kinds of counters among permanents you control. So like I said, they care a lot in this deck especially, but I think even in the main set there's stuff about different types of counters, and here, excuse me, allergies are crazy today. I apologize in advance for any weird sounds or whatever, but we're gonna do our best. So anyway, different kinds of counters. So this is not just +1/+1 counters, like I said. Think back to, and I'm sure it existed before this. Actually, I guess I'm not sure. I haven't been actively playing for too long, but one of my favorite sets is Ikoria. I'm probably going to talk about Ikoria at least once every time I stream something Magic related. It's just going to happen, so sorry, not sorry. But in Ikoria, adding different kinds of counters to creatures was a major theme. You had death touch counters, lifelink counters, flying counters, menace counters, trample counters, etc. Those were like the major five, and then there were others periodically interspersed throughout. And so this is talking about that very similar. I mean, honestly, this could even be -1/-1 counters. So yeah. So there are many places you can go with this kind of deck, and I'm excited to see it. Art-wise, because we are also a Vorthos stream here. Oh, my name is Shadowcat, or Cat, by the way. I keep forgetting to introduce myself. We will get there someday. Anyway, and as I said, this is a Vorthos style stream, so we're going to talk about the flavor, and that means art, flavor text, the name of the card, even the mechanics of the card if that is flavorful. So he's Perry the Pulverizer. It's a nice, kind of a throwback style name with the alliteration. It sounds very, very noir almost, right? Which is kind of what they're going for. And he's a Pulverizer, and he's got a giant hammer, so... And he seems to be busting through a wall, so like I think it matches. It's good enough. Maybe the shield counter would be that he's got his horn to protect him when he's bashing through things. The different kinds of counters thing doesn't make as much sense, but he's the face card. He's here to help facilitate what the deck is trying to do, and we'll see as we go on that that's kind of what happens. So next we have the alternate commander for this deck, and that is Kroos. I hope it's Kroos. Defense Contractor, and he is a 2/4 cat advisor. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a shield counter on target creature an opponent controls. Whenever you put one or more counters on a creature you don't control, tap that creature and goad it. It gains trample until your next turn. So until your next turn, that creature attacks each combat if able, and attacks a player other than you if able. Right, so that's basically what goading is. It's you taunt. Goading is taunting, essentially, but you're directing the taunting elsewhere. And so they have to attack every time, but they can't attack you. And it's interesting, because it implies that you could put other types of counters on creatures you don't control, and I mean, I know this is true. I don't know how much in these colors offhand, but I know that you can. So, but it is interesting that you have to tap that creature. Oh, but I guess it's your upkeep. So you would tap the creature so that it can't attack you, and then when it gets to their turn, presumably you do the next person in line so that they have to attack immediately, and people have less time to deal with it, you know. And then it gets trampled, so, you know, everybody's having a great time, except for that person. And I guess the people they're attacking. It's okay. That's not the point. Now, as far as the art goes, oh good, there's my mouse. So, in a lot of the art that talks about, on the cards that talk about shield counters, we have this. This is the style of art that tends to be on those. It's like a little magic shield, literally. I find it interesting, I guess because he's placing it on someone else. So he's defending, but he's also a contractor. So he's defending someone else's creature, but because he's a contractor, the creature can't come at him, I suppose. Yeah, it's lawyer stuff. It's kind of what the brokers are. The brokers are the lawyers and the judges and all that, and it's kind of their thing. So, yeah, it's fine. He looks very, very good. He is super well dressed. In the story, he was very well dressed too. I remember, like almost annoyingly so. All right. Next up, we have Agent's Toolkit. 3 mana for an artifact clue. Okay, so if I recall correctly, the art for the original clue tokens, which I think were from Innistrad, I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure. I believe they had feathers in them, right? Because people were looking for the angels, I think, pretty sure. So it's interesting to me, and I guess I realize like there's also a flying counter here. Let's just read it and then we'll get into it. Agent's Toolkit enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter, a flying counter, a death touch counter, and a shield counter on it. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may move a counter from Agent's Toolkit onto that creature. Then you can pay 2 to sacrifice Agent's Toolkit and draw a card. So this is actually a really, really cool card if you're doing all the counter type stuff, because it comes in with a bunch of tools that you can use. It's interesting that it's a clue. I'm not sure. Trying to remember. Actually, there might be something else in here that makes clue tokens or cares about clue tokens or something like that. So that maybe that's why. I don't remember, to be honest. That's okay. So it comes in with a +1/+1 counter, which I'm trying to discern which is which here, because we have the flying counter, right? Is that like maybe a poison dart or something? Maybe that's the death touch counter? And then shield counter, because we have some bracers. And I don't know. One of these is maybe a gun, so maybe that's death touch. Regardless, I can identify at least 2, and I'm assuming that these other pieces are one of the others. Maybe this is the +1/+1 counter because it's Halo, and Halo gives everyone a boost, and so maybe this is like a gun you have to put together. But it looks kind of like a sniper rifle, actually, so that may well be it. So this is the death touch counter. Regardless, it's very cool looking art, and I appreciate the fact that there are different components incorporated into it. So you play this, it comes out with these counters. When a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can move a counter from the toolkit onto that creature, and then at the end, once they've all picked out their tools, you can pay 2 and sack it to draw a card, so it replaces itself. I think that's great. I really like this. It's very dynamic and interesting, and as we said, they care about counters of all kinds, and this just kind of gives you 4 of them. So that's really, really nice. Moving along. Angelic Sleuth is a 2/3 Angel Advisor with flying. Whenever another permanent you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, investigate. I literally just said I thought there was maybe something that produced clue tokens. But here's the thing. Oh, that's why you can pay 2 and sack it to draw a card, because it's a clue. I get it now. We got there. It just took us a little bit of time, but we got there. It's fine. Everything's fine. All right. So, again, they care about counters. If another permanent dies while it had counters, you make a clue token, which allows you to draw an extra card for 2 mana. And that's great. Now we have here an angel. Interestingly, a lot of the angels in the art have, at least the recent angels, I think the older ones probably had like feathery wings, but the new ones that are still around which honestly I didn't even realize there were until I started looking at the cards, have these sort of metallic wings. And it's a really interesting way to combine the ideas of the older world angels and the new modern metal city, you know? And of course we have this beautiful stained glass kind of snowflake looking halo, which all the angels seem to have so far. And then we have flavor text. Some crime scene's secrets can only be discerned from an angel's eye view instead of a bird's eye view. Get it? So, yeah. And she's floating up there with her notebook, taking stock of what's happened. It looks like this is said crime scene. I mean, unless this is just normal in New Capenna, which, like, I don't know, maybe. But probably not. This is probably the crime scene that she's checking out. Odd angle to be doing it, but, you know. Who am I to judge? Alright. Excuse me. Avon Courier is a 1/1 bird advisor with flying. Whenever Avon Courier attacks, choose a counter on a permanent you control. Put a counter of that kind on target permanent you control if it doesn't have a counter of that kind on it. So this is cool. Whenever this one attacks, and it's a flyer, so they're going to need a direct removal spell to get rid of it, unless they've got flyers, but I mean, that's somewhat more rare. Every time it attacks, if you've got a counter on a permanent that you control, you can just move it over to, not even move it over, add one to a creature that you control that doesn't already have a counter of that kind. So you can't add another +1/+1 counter, but if one had, if one had a flying counter and one of yours didn't, you could add a flying counter to the one that doesn't, and now you've got, well, 3 flyers, because this doesn't have it could have a flying counter, but that would be a little redundant. But yeah, really interesting stuff, and I think that's an awesome card, and I'm really excited. Like, these aren't my normal colors. Green and white I tend to incorporate into things, but blue's not my normal color. However, this deck has me very excited for this concept, especially since I love Ikoria, and Ikoria had all these things, and goodness knows I have enough cards that I could kind of mishmash in here. It looks like a solid deck on its own, but I just have so many things. Interestingly, I think the Ozolith, just as a little bit of a tangent, the Ozolith I think would be a really good card in here, and I'm almost positive I've got one. I have so much Ikoria, guys. So much. But yeah, the Ozolith lets you, whenever a creature you control dies, if it had counters on it, move those counters to the Ozolith, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may put any number of counters from the Ozolith onto target creature? Yeah, pretty sure. So I think that would be sick in this deck. So if I get this, and I probably will, like, we're gonna tune it up, we're gonna put the Ozolith in there, we're gonna see what happens. It's a 1-mana artifact, by the way. Super easy. Colorless. Alright, anyway. Bribery Taker. Okay, so we have a 6/6 Rhino Warrior with Trample. When Bribery Taker enters the battlefield, for each kind of counter on permanents you control, you may put your choice of a +1/+1 counter or a counter of that kind on Bribery Taker. Well, okay. So when this guy enters, you just get counters on him. Just put some counters on. Whatever you've got out. So, as we said before, if you've got flying, lifelink, first strike, menace, whatever you happen to have out there, I don't think you'll be able to get menace in here, actually, because I'm pretty sure that's only in red and black, but whatever. Yeah, he just gets those, which is probably, but he's already a 6/6 trample for 6, which is just wild, right? And when he enters the battlefield, he just gets all the counters, which is fantastic. And you don't have to give him those counters. So if you already have a trample counter out and you don't want to give him double trample, he can just get a +1/+1 counter instead. So that's great. I also just realized I never actually did the flavor text on this one. No, there was no flavor text, but I didn't react to the art. So in the art, we have here an Aven, a birdfolk, and appears to be carrying a message or a package of some kind. So I suppose, I don't know, it makes a little less sense based on this. He attacks, you put a counter. Maybe he's delivering the counter to the other person. We could go with that. Yeah, sure. So there you go, that works. And this one, he has clearly taken a number of bribes. You see this? These riches abound. And he's even got some halo over here in a glass. I don't even know what this is. I have no idea. It maybe a map? No, not a clue. It doesn't matter. He's covered in gold and even has a decked out horn. Like that, you know you're doing well at that point. In New Capenna, it's survival of the richest. So I guess, okay, so he enters the battlefield and he gets all the counters that you have out, any type that you have out. So that would be all the bribes he's taking, I suppose. But then, I mean, he does work for you, so I guess you're bribing him, but at least it pays off. Sure, yeah, great. Hi, Colby. My cat decided to visit because he's cute, but he's politely sitting outside the door, just kind of waiting for acknowledgement. I tried, but he's distracted. Anyway, if he comes in, we may say hello officially. All right, so this is one of them that was in the original set, but they included it in the Commander Precon as well. And so I wanted to put those in here because they only put some of them in the Precons, and I thought that that held some significance, you know? What they thought out of the main set was worth putting in. So we have the Broker's Charm. The charms are a cycle, as you may know. So it's just green, white, blue for an instant. You can choose one. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. So it gets +1/+0 and then it bites something. You can destroy target enchantment, or you can draw 2 cards. I think this is just in here because, well, I mean, you are going to have some +1/+1 encounters rolling around, and that's something. Obviously, the utility of being able to remove a creature, an enchantment, or draw 2 cards is there, but I just mean from a deck plan standpoint, it's fine. Now, this is a wax seal, which makes sense because they're always wheeling and dealing in the brokers. I mean, that's kind of their whole thing, is contracts. They make contracts with people. It's their jam. Sometimes people don't even remember the contracts they've made, which is fun. So, yeah, it's fine. I wanted to put it in here, and the others are in here too. We'll get to them later. This is a new one. Broker's Confluence. This is also a cycle. Each of the families has a Confluence card. So this is an instant for 2 green, white, blue. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once, which is interesting to me because most of the time you have to pick different ones. But that's why they say, it would maybe say like choose 1 or choose, like the charm did, or choose 2 or something. But because you can choose 3, you can do all of them, or 2 the same and 1 different, or all 3 the same. And that's probably why it's 5 mana, because you're getting a lot of value out of this. So you can proliferate, which you choose any number of permanents and or players, then give each another counter of each kind they already have. Now this would work with +1/+1 counters. It's not really going to work with any of the other types. I guess you could choose -1/-1 counters if you've placed them on an opponent's creature, and you could just use that as a kill spell. That would be really interesting. Alternatively, target creature faces out. Treat it and anything attached to it as though they don't exist until its controller's next turn. So this does not, to be clear, exile the creature from the battlefield and then return it. So if there's, if an opponent has like a pacifism on it or something, it won't lose the pacifism because pacifism is attached to the creature. So they just kind of like, they just kind of leave for a minute. Like they can't be interacted with. That's how phasing out works. It doesn't trigger enter the battlefield effects or anything like that. It's just kind of not there. It's a nice way to protect things or to stop something else from attacking, which is cool. Alternatively, you can counter target activated or triggered ability. So you got a lot going on here, and it's interesting because I believe each of the confluences are a choose 3. You may choose the same move more than once thing, so you have 3 different options, 3 different colors, and 3 different characters, and they each appear to be doing, I don't know, I think this guy has a Gavel, so that's probably the countering. The phasing out would probably be the shield counter, and the proliferating is making a deal, maybe? Yeah, probably. We'll go with it, right? Anyway, it's cool. I haven't really looked a whole lot at most of the art in these, so that will be somewhat of a fresh reaction, so I'm excited. Broker's Hideout. This is another one that is in the main set. They did not include the Trilands in these Commander Precommons, which is pretty depressing. I think they just kind of knew that everyone was going to want them, and so they didn't put them in there. But they didn't do that for Courier either. They didn't put the Trilands in there, all the Triomes. Kind of frustrating. I mean, you kind of just had to hope you got it, but it's like, come on. It's fine, though. So this works a little differently. It is a land, but it doesn't tap for mana. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it. When you do, search your library for a basic forest, plains, or island card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle, and you gain a life. So it's an auto-sacrifice land, which I haven't seen them before. I don't know if they're completely new or not, but I know I haven't seen them. And it's fine. I mean, I think that's kind of how they always work, and you gain the life, which is nice. So flavor text. Once the witness was inside, the safe house vanished first from sight, then from memory, which is very interesting. And it definitely looks like that's what's happening, right? Like, you've got the hideout, I guess, and it has almost a glamour on it that that's how I imagine. I mean, I don't think it's literally disappearing, but I know that in some mythologies there are glamours that you can put on a building that kind of just make people not look at something, like their eyes just kind of slide past it. At least that's how I've heard it described. I can't remember where, but anyway, that's yeah. I assume that's what's happening here. I don't think it's literally vanishing, but they just kind of forget about it. Yeah, and they've taken in a witness. And that's good. They're protecting their witness, I hope. I hope it's nothing weird. It probably is. It's probably something bad, but, you know, here we are. What are you gonna do? Alright. Contractual Safeguard. So it's 2 and a white for an instant. Addendum. Which I don't think there are... I don't remember if addendum is a known keyword or not. But in any case, it's here, and it's got it's legal jargon, which is why I think it's probably here in the first place. If you cast this spell during your main phase, put a shield counter on a creature you control. So as you said, shield counters, if it would be dealt damage or destroyed, remove a shield counter from it instead. If you did not, either way, choose a kind of counter on a creature you control. Put a counter of that kind on each other creature you control. Now, conceivably, that can be extremely powerful. I'm very, very excited for that. Yeah. So, obviously, if you cast it during your main phase, you can get a shield counter. So, cast during your main phase, you can get a shield counter on a creature you control, and then you can choose a kind of counter, which could then be the shield counter, and put one on each creature you control, right? Alternatively, if you want to cast this whenever, you could just give everything a trample counter after blockers have been declared. That would be like a really cool way to do it. You have a trample counter on one creature, and then blockers are declared, you cast this, everything gets trample, in you go. I'm dreaming of beautiful, beautiful combats. I like big, stompy, tramply things, alright? And this, I can just... Oh, I can see it working. I love it. Anyway. So yeah, I think it's really cool. A contractual safeguard. So this person is holding the shield counter that you can get. And this person's got a gun? Yeah, pretty sure that's a gun. And it looks like they're guarding these people back here, but I don't know, like 2 people, one with a gun, one with a shield for an entire group seems sketchy at best. But hey, you know, best of luck to them. Yeah. It seems to make sense because they're sharing their counters, the shielding and the, I don't know, death touch or something. So yeah, fair enough. Yes! Board wipe! We love some board wipes in Commander, do we not? So we have Damning Verdict. It is sorcery speed, regrettably, but you know, what are you gonna do? 3 white, destroy all creatures with no counters on them. Even better, right? Perfect. Because your creatures, if you're playing this deck in a certain way, are likely to have counters on them. So it's not even a full board wipe. It's a, I mean, granted, your opponent's creatures may have some on them. If you're up against a +1/+1 counter-oriented deck, you're going to have a bad time. But even then, I mean, you're probably going to get at least 2 of your opponents, like most of their creatures, and probably all 3. Just odds are. And yeah, the flavor text is pretty on point. Guilty as charged. Bam! This like brilliant glowing gavel comes down, and all these people are just literally blown away. It's they can't even handle the light. You can't handle the truth, and neither can they. So yeah, I'm on board. I mean, obviously this is going in, well, it'd be better in this deck, this counters deck, but I feel like it could just go in many white decks as just another board wipe, you know? So yeah, cool. Okay, now this is another legendary creature. Most of the decks, I think all of them, have at least one other legendary creature as a new card in them. And if not new from the precons, new from the Streets of New Capenna set. So this is this one. One of them has another that has all 3 of the colors in it, so could be an alternate commander for the whole thing, but I don't think she is, I don't think what she does is as oriented towards what the rest of the deck is trying to do. So you could still use her, but it wouldn't, I think you'd want to swap out some more cards in there. Most of them, I'm pretty sure, just have 2 colors, like 2 of the 3 in the deck. So this guy here, Denry Klin, Editor-in-Chief, is a 2/2 cat advisor. Denry Klin, Editor-in-Chief, enters the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1, first strike, or vigilance counter on it. Whenever a non-token creature you control enters the battlefield, if Denry has counters on it, put the same number and kind of counters on that creature. That is nice. Doesn't work with tokens, but like, I mean, if you have any element of White Weenie in here, you can make it happen, Cap'n. You just play out your stuff. I think this is great. So, so he enters with a counter of whatever kind you want on him, and then presumably with this deck you can be adding different types of counters, and then whenever another non-token creature enters battlefield under your control, they get the same counters. So it's kind of interesting because this is like the Editor-in-Chief. He's labeled as a cat advisor, so I don't know, maybe he's advising people. He's clearly working at a newspaper, so at least the Editor-in-Chief part makes sense. The ability, somewhat less so. Unless you figure like he's learning more or something, and he has information for other people, and he's also being vigilant. But the giving that to other people, I guess because they're reading the paper? Yeah, okay, sure. They're reading the paper and they get the types of counters that he has. That works. But yeah, a very cool card, I like it. exotic pets. Now, we did see this one actually in the last stream of the top 10 flavor faves because this card goes with Expendable Lackey, flavor text-wise, the story of poor Altonio. So watch that stream if you're interested. Don't just look up the card. It was a good stream. You should check it out. Alright. So this is one of them from the main new Capenna set that they included in this. It's actually an instant. So it's 1 white-blue. Create 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens with this creature can't be blocked. Then, for each kind of counter among creatures you control, put a counter of that kind on either of those tokens. So if you have a +1/+1 counter on one of your creatures, and actually you could have multiple types of counters. So you could say, I mean, it kind of seems a little silly to put a flying counter on an unblockable, but maybe not. So let's just say you have a trample counter. You have a trample counter and a 1/1 counter on the same creature. So one of each, either of those tokens? Wait, let me make sure that I'm reading this correctly. Counter of that kind on either of those tokens. Oh no, only one of the fish gets a counter, it looks like. Yeah, actually trample seems really silly on an unblockable too. Whatever. Which is maybe why they did it, because there weren't enough situations that actually even made sense. So it's probably gonna get, you're gonna have one of the fish get a +1/+1 counter. So then you have a 1/1 and a 2/2, each unblockable. So great. We'll read the flavor text again, yeah. Investigators observed that Altonio's beloved fish were thriving after his disappearance. And you'll have to watch the stream to find out what happened to poor Altonio. Or you can probably figure it out. Alright. You know, here are the fish. Art is solid. Though why all the fish are unblockable is kind of strange to me. I think they're in tanks, so it seems as though they would be blocked, but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they just swim through walls. It could happen. Alright. Family's Favor. 2 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever you attack, put a shield counter on target attacking creature. Until end of turn, it gains, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, remove a shield counter from it. If you do, draw a card. Okay, so you attack, you put a shield counter on one of your attacking creatures, and if it manages to deal combat damage to a player, you can remove the shield counter from, well, you have to remove the shield counter from it, and then you get to draw a card. So if they block, then it just doesn't take the damage, and I don't know, if they've blocked well, then I guess their creature won't die, but it might. It's just ineffective. But if it manages to get through, then you get to draw a card. It loses the shield counter, but this is an enchantment, so you can just do it again next time. On some of those unblockable fish, this would actually be pretty nice, right? Because you're just going to keep drawing cards until they can deal with your fish. So yeah, I think that's really nice. This seems to be the family coming out ready to brawl. So I guess if you have the family's favor, you're going to be protected and you're going to be learning. So you're drawing cards and you have shield counters, and yeah, I think that tracks. I think it's good. Let me make sure that everything is on the up and up here, because last time it wouldn't show me any of my chat. Alright, cool. I just wanted to make sure. That nothing was happening in chat that I needed to look at. Alright. Moving along. Gavel of the Righteous. 2 mana for an equipment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a charge counter on Gavel of the Righteous. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on Gavel of the Righteous. As long as Gavel of the Righteous has 4 or more counters on it, equipped creature has double strike. Equip, pay 3, or remove a counter from Gavel of the Righteous. So you can either weaken the effect or you can pay 3. Now 3 is pretty costly for an equipment, and it's going to take multiple turns to get there unless you have ways to put counters on equipment. I don't know how many of those exist. Yeah, well, you could put counters on artifacts. Probably. I don't actually know. I need to look into this a little more. I'm not sure how many ways there are to do that. But if you can, then this is nicely, because it's just not going to do anything, right? Like, if you don't let it sit there for a little while, accumulating counters, you're going to have to pay 3, or it just won't do anything when it gets equipped. Now, I will say you could equip it by removing a counter and then just wait, and then next turn it'll get another counter and the creature will get +1/+1, but I don't know. That seems silly, because you want it to get up to 4 or more counters because you really want double strike, right? So it just kind of sits there. I suppose you could say that they're like thinking about the judgment at hand, and the double strike I like to think is because the hammer has 2 sides. But I don't know about the righteous. I mean, these are the brokers, like I'm not sure, but reminder to hydrate. Yes, my water is orange because I have flavor and vitamin enhancers in it. It's yummy. Orange tangerine, pretty sure. Very tasty. Hydration is important, kids. All right. So we're just gonna keep going. Park Heights Maverick. 2 and a green for a 2/2 human soldier. I realize I haven't been reading the mana costs of the other creatures. Maybe I should, but it wasn't my main focus, so here we are. Okay, dethrone, which is a keyword I don't think I've seen before. I'm willing to allow that it may be in like Commander Legends or something, because I didn't see a whole lot of those cards, surprisingly enough. In any case, dethrone. Whenever this creature attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most life, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So they want to go for whoever's in charge. Park Heights Maverick can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Makes sense. Whenever Park Heights Maverick deals combat damage to a player or dies, proliferate. So that's where you put extra counters of the same type on any planeswalker and or any number of planeswalkers or creatures. There we go. All right. So, yeah, he's a Maverick and apparently wielding a shield, even though there is not a shield counter in here. I mean, in the mechanics of the card. But whatever. The Maverick, the rich guy, basically, wants to go for the most powerful person. I guess, because that's who they deal with. And in that same vein, they can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Sure, they don't interact with the peasantry. Who do you think we are? And and you gain more power when they deal combat damage to a player. Particularly when they go after the one that is the highest up, right? When they die, that's kind of interesting. I guess because you inherit their stuff. Yeah, we'll go with that. Yeah, you inherit their things. Okay. Resourceful Defense. 2 and a white for an enchantment. This is beautiful art, by the way. I know it seems really simple, but the detail, like, it's like this iridescence to the shield here, which is really, really cool. And again, there's no shield in this text, but whatever, it's fine. Whenever a permanent you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on target permanent you control. Okay, great. So that's actually, that's similar to the Ozolith, except you skip the Ozolith step, basically. And it's, target permanent. Now see, this works well with the Gavel of the Righteous, because it doesn't say creature, so if you have a permanent that has some +1/+1 counters on it, you can just put it on the Gavel. That's not even a creature, it's just when it leaves the battlefield. Ooh, can you imagine this with like some flicker effects? Blink, I think it's called blink effects. Yeah. Interesting. Anyway, so then you can pay 4 and a white. Move any number of counters from target permanent you control to another target permanent you control. So in that case, you can just skip the leaving the battlefield step and just put them straight over there. And that's good. Yeah. Seems solid to me. Yeah, I guess you're being resourceful. Defense, like I said, defense, shield, no shield. So, mildly disappointed. I suppose they're saying, like, well, it could be a shield counter. Fair enough. But, whatever. And this person's being resourceful. There are papers flying everywhere. And I don't know what they put up, but I'm assuming they just kind of conjured a shield and they're defending themselves and they've been resourceful, so they get these counters. So sure. Shield broker. Now see, we have a shield. And a shield. Very exciting. 3 blue for a 3/4 cephalid advisor. When shield broker enters the battlefield, put a shield counter on target non-commander creature you control. No commanders for shields for you. Let me try that again. No shields on commanders for you. Words are hard. You gain control of that creature. Oh, that makes sense, because they want you stealing people's commanders, because that's just, like, rude. You gain control of that creature for as long as it has a shield counter on it. So basically, if you expect to be attacking with it, you can get 1 attack out of it. Or you can just keep it and be activating its abilities. Now that's something. And they won't actually be able to, they'll have to deal damage to it or destroy it twice, because they'll do it the first time and the shield counter will be removed. And then they'll do it a second time and it'll actually, well, actually no, they wouldn't have to, because as long as the shield counter's on it. So once the shield counter's gone, it goes back to them. But the thing to steal here is something with like an activated ability or of some kind, in my opinion, or like an enchantment creature, something like that. Unless you just want to swing in with it, because, I mean, it could just be a really, really big creature. and yeah, maybe you just want to go for it. And if you attack into a board that is unfavorable because they have other things up and they don't want their creature to die, they're faced to either let it through or block, and then their own creature is dead. No, it would just go back to them, wouldn't it? Never mind. Ignore that last part. What I said before is accurate. Don't listen to that second part. Take something with activated abilities or something giant. Preferably with trample. And maybe don't put a trample counter on it because they're going to get it back. Alright. Oh, right. And as we talked about, we've got the shield, and also he's brokering a deal and signing something. I'm not really sure why the shield is even involved. Oh! Right. So one of the ways that the brokers operate is they show up when people are in trouble and they're like, hey, we can get you out of this, just sign here. And they get people to sign things. And so you see the flames over here, like clearly something's going on, and this person has just shown up like, hi, how are you? Are you in trouble? I can get you out of this if you like. Just sign. And so that's what this is for. So shielding the person literally and legally from what's happening to them. All they have to do is sign here. I like that. Okay, and then you gain control of the creature because you've successfully done the contract. Okay, alright, I'm on board. That's cool. Sky Boon Evangelist. 4 and a white for a 3/3 bird advisor with flying. When Sky Boon Evangelist enters the battlefield, support 6. Whoa, alright. So you already get a 3/3 flyer for 5, which is expensive. But you support 6. Put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 6 other target creatures. So if you've been going wide at all, you just pump the team permanently. It's great. Whenever a creature with a counter on it attacks one of your opponents, that creature gains flying until end of turn. Now this is interesting. So your creatures can all get flying, and that's great. Alternatively, if there's a creature that's just being really difficult towards you, that keeps attacking you or whatever, you can just... Now granted, this is a risk, because they could just keep attacking you, but if you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and you've been like successfully blocking it, and they could give it flying if they swing somewhere else, that could be a way to do that. It's generally advisable to like make the deals about this and don't just trust that that's what's going to happen. Say, hey, you know, if you want, I can put a 1/1 counter on one of these creatures and it'll get flying if it attacks someone else, so you can be doing your damage, you know. I'm not sure how well that's going to work necessarily, but hey, you know, giving all your stuff flying is definitely great. But it's up to you. And I love So it's a boon, right? The boon is you get flying. And this person is just handing out, like, an evangelist usually implies some kind of belief, right? So another part of the broker's mythology, I guess, is that they believe in some ancient prophecy, and that's why they're racking up all of these contracts. They're like waiting for that to happen. And so I don't know, maybe this person actually is like proselytizing the prophecy, but I thought that it was secret. So that seems unlikely, but I don't know why else it's evangelist. I guess they could just be telling them about the law firm. Yeah. But either way, they're helping people one way or another, so that's nice. Storm of Forms. Okay, so I didn't realize this when I looked before, but this poor guy, he's just like surrounded by forms. I thought that it was like you're taking different forms, and I think that that's kind of happening. Ish. But in the art, he's caught in a whirlwind of forms, like paper forms. It looks very unpleasant. So it's 3 and a blue for an instant. When you cast this spell, copy it for each kind of counter among permanents you control. You may choose new targets for the copies. So that's where Storm comes from, because Storm is all about copying instants and sorceries and stuff like that for a certain number of... It's usually other spells you've cast that turn, but in this case it's kinds of counters among permanents you control. So that's kind of cool. And you can return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Was there? No, good. No flavor text there. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So, if you've got like 6 different counters among permanents you control, you can bounce 6 non-land permanents back to their owner's hands. Maybe he's getting sucked up into this vortex of forms, and the forms are the counters. Sure. Beware the fine print. Ooh. Maybe he signed a bunch of deals or something and he didn't read the fine print and now he's like SOL and they're just gonna take him away forever. That's brutal. Yeah. That seems to be the case for sure. Okay. I thought so. We are into the Cabaretti Cacophony. Okay. So let's get into it, right? This is the face commander for this deck is Kit Kanto Mayhem Diva. 1 red, green, white for a 3/3 cat bard druid. Sure. When Kit Kanto enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. At the beginning of combat on each player's turn, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control. When you do, target creature that player controls gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. Goad that creature. Okay, so basically, she comes in as a 3/3, you get a 1/1. Great. Okay, so you have 4 power on the board for 4 mana. Cool. Then at the beginning of combat on each player's turn, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control, and target creature that player, referring to whoever's turn it is, their creature gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn, and you goad that creature. Now, goad, remember, is where they have to attack every turn if able, or every combat if able, and they have to attack someone who's not you. So that's kind of interesting. You're going to tap down 2 of your creatures, but this deck loves tokens. Just tokens all over the place, as you may recall. And so you're gonna have little baby creatures that you can just tap 2 of them. Whatever creature looks least enjoyable to you to have coming for your face, just give it +2/+2 and trample, except it can't attack you. So that's pretty nice. And that's what she wants to do. Her whole thing is like have little baby creatures and pump them, or she does pumping and gaining, or goading. We're gonna see that, okay? My power of expression is waning. I need water. Reminder to hydrate. Actually, I have a very themey, you can't see it as well now because the water's colored, but you may be able to see I've got like a whole jungle going on this cup, and so that's actually pretty appropriate for this deck in particular. So anyway, I guess she's singing magically and making it so that she's using her powers to sway the crowd and make it so she doesn't get attacked. Yeah, okay. Very pretty. Very pretty art, and I want this. I think that's the microphone. I'm almost positive. That's just crazy. Alright. Now this is the alternate commander for this particular deck. I think it's Fabian. We're gonna go with Fabian. Fabian? Fabian, sure. Fabian, Boss's Confidant. 3 red, green, white for a 3/6 cat advisor. Creature tokens you control have haste. Great. Like I said, tokens everywhere. Parlay. And I know that's a returning mechanic, but I'm unfamiliar with it personally, so let's see. At the beginning of combat on your turn, each player reveals the top card of their library. For each land card revealed this way, you create a 1/1... Hi, Alex! I just saw you in chat. For each land card revealed this way, you create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. Then, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn for each non-land card revealed this way. Then each player draws a card. Okay. I think at one point Wizards just said, hey, we've kind of done it all, so let's do more. But that meant they just needed to put more and more complex things on the cards. And it's getting out of control at this point. I think they're trying to rein it in, but it's a lot. Alright, let's break it down. Okay, so combat on your turn happens. Everyone reveals the top card. For each land card, you get a 1/1 citizen token. And then creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn for each non-land card. Great, and then everybody draws a card. So sharing is caring, and interestingly, if she is the boss's confidant, people are sharing with her, sharing knowledge and feelings and all kinds of stuff, and she's just gaining from that. Interesting suit that she's got going on, by the way. I assumed this was a dress, and then I looked at it and no, it's, and she's wearing a bird's feather. For some reason that strikes me as ironic, seeing as she's a cat. But that's funny. Yeah. Very interesting commander. But like I said, tokens and pumping the team. This is what we're here for. And sharing, even if this is not sharing in the traditional group hug sense. Cool. Oh, Alex, this is the second deck. We already went through the, I can't even remember now. The Brokers. We went through the Brokers deck. That was a really good one. So, I'll be putting this up on YouTube later, and of course it'll be accessible on Twitch. So anyone watching now who's sad that they missed things, it'll be up later and you'll be able to check it out. Because now I know how Twitch works, and my videos won't be deleted. Not for 14 days anyway. Alright. Bess, Soul Nourisher. Okay, not just because of the name, I mean that is part of it, but she gives me art and everything very much Dina Soul Steeper vibes, right? Like, we have the glowing green cup thing. Granted, it's kind of a ladle. Wait a minute, is that like a brass knuckles design on the handle? It totally is. It absolutely is. Awesome. Okay. And then there's a child playing in the background. Sure, maybe it's her daughter. They look kind of similar, actually. Anyway, 1 green white for a 1/1 human citizen. Now that is expensive for a 1/1, but let's see. Whenever one or more other creatures with base power and toughness 1/1 enter the battlefield under your control, okay, so, I mean, we're making 1/1 green and white human citizen creature tokens all over the place, so Maybe that's a thing. Put a +1/+1 counter on Bess Soul Nourisher. Great, so she does well with other small individuals. Please see child. Whenever Bess attacks, each other creature you control with base power and toughness 1/1 gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Bess. Okay, so she does have to attack, so she's less likely to stick around, unless you have another way to protect her, say with shield counters, which I know are in the other deck, but you could combine them. I'm just saying, you can adjust the decks. In any case, everybody else who is base power and toughness 1/1 gets pumped in accordance with how many +1/+1 counters are on Bess. I think that's a really neat mechanic. I like that a lot. Yeah, it's an interesting way to go. I mean, she's got green, but I mean, it's such a white weenie thing. Like, so I'm very curious to see how that goes. And yeah, as we talked about, she's got this nice brew that she's giving to people, presumably to help nourish them. So the more cooperation she gets, the more people she's surrounded by, the more she can do for everyone. And yeah, she's very pretty too. I like this this accent color she's got going on. All right. Boss's Chauffeur. 4 and a white for a 0/0 elf citizen. Well, this is better. Boss's Chauffeur enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to 1 plus the number of other creatures you control. So you can't play him out on an empty board, but I'm hoping since he's 5 mana that you wouldn't be doing that anyway. I mean, there's a possibility, I'll grant you, but do not play him out right after a board wipe because he'll just die immediately. But he has Alliance as well. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Boss's Chauffeur. Great. So he can get bigger too. That's really nice. I mean, he's going to start out reasonably sized, but then he can keep going. When Boss's Chauffeur dies, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token for each +1/+1 counter on it. Nice. Now again, if he comes out on an empty board and dies immediately, you don't get anything. So that he has to have a +1/+1 counter on him, and he gets those by there being other creatures out. If you cast him and then before he hits the battlefield try to cast to target and put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, he hasn't resolved yet, so you can't do that either. Like, you need to play him out on a board with at least one other creature, and then at that point he'll get 2 +1/+1 counters. So he's still a 2/2 for 5 at that point. It's not a great deal, but you know, at least he would survive. So yeah, super white weenie strategy here. Like, there's a lot of that in this deck. A lot of small creatures, go wide, pump everybody, do the whole thing. And yeah, I mean, we see the car here in the art. He's got his nice little chauffeur's cap. Very, very dapper. One of my favorite elements of this, though, is the this collar here, because it's made to look like leaves, right? And he's clearly in a leafy area, because we do love our plants here at the Cabaretti. But this collar is that's just everything. I love it. It's so interesting and thematic. I don't know if I've talked about this before, but again, I'm looking at this, and this car is running on Halo, and really, what was so difficult about wheels? And I don't know, you could even have horse-drawn carriages. Like, I realized, I guess they just took it for granted. They just took Halo for granted, and that's really sad, because now they're running out of it, and they're panicking, and they're fighting amongst each other, and it's just ugly. Anyway, I like the card. It's you'd have to have the right kind of deck for it. This is supposed to be that kind of deck, but yeah, I'm intrigued. Alright, Cabaretti Charm. So, yeah, this is one of them that was in the original set. It's in the charm cycle, red, green, white for an instant. Choose one. Cabaretti Charm deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature or planeswalker. Great. So like we said, if you're going wide, this is going to be an even better one because you can just... It doesn't hit the face, which is sad. But, you know, what are you going to do? You can probably take out a big creature, though. Or a creature if you need to. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. Also very nice. Or create 2 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Great. Yeah, you can take something out if you need to. Pump up the team and go in if you need to. Ideally, you've already gone in. You're kind of pumping the team after the fact. Or you can just get some more creatures out there if that's what you need. Art-wise, we've got roses and blades, which, yeah, that strikes me as fairly Cabaretti. The blades are an interesting touch. I feel like something animal-oriented might have been more in line with it, but, you know, maybe some ballet shoes or something, I don't know. Or heels. They wouldn't do ballet, that's right, that would be a Maestro's thing. These would be like some really, really cool stilettos. Anyway, yeah, solid card, helps, fits in the deck, cool. Cabaretti Confluence, that's a new one. So we have 3 red, green, white. I can identify colors for a sorcery. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. Like I said, this is a cycle. This is kind of how they work. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. It gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the end step. Cool. Exile target artifact or enchantment. Great. We love to exile. Creatures target player controls get +1/+1 and gain first strike until end of turn. Great. So this is sorcery speed. You're not casting this on anyone else's turn, unless you have something that gives your spells flash, but I don't even know. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure it exists, but I don't know what it would be. So this would be on your own turn, and, you know, you're going to have to reveal that information, or you can just make another token copy that can then attack and then get sacrificed, or if you need to, you can get rid of some pesky artifact or enchantment. Or multiples, because you can pick the same mode more than once, which is great. As far as representation in the art, this would seem to be the token copy gaining haste, because she is like flying on that dance floor. +1/+1 and first strike is probably the guy sipping Halo, because like I said, Halo is... It's like cocaine in a glass, as far as I can tell. Sorry, that was not family friendly in the least. But it is! Wizards is like, oh yeah, it's this substance that everybody is crazy for, and they consume it and use it, and it gives them extra power and stuff, and everyone's like, so it's a drug? And they're like, well, I think they just like never responded. Anyway, it's kind of funny. So, this guy would then have to be the person exiling the target artifact or enchantment, and he has a cat on his shoulder? He better not be doing that. I don't know, he's just here. I don't really see him doing anything in particular that relates to that, but how are you really gonna, how are you gonna draw that? I don't, he'd have to be smashing something, so he could be smashing a glass. I mean, that would work, right? But I guess they just decided not to go that route, and that's fine. Cabaretti Courtyard. This is another one of that cycle from the main set. It's a land. When Cabaretti Courtyard enters the battlefield, sacrifice it. When you do, search your library for a basic mountain, forest, or plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle, and you gain a life. So it auto-sacks. You get to fix your mana, which is great. It does enter tapped, but, you know, you're getting out what you need. And we love cards like this, especially in Commander. It's like, hey, I need all the things I can get to help me get out the right lands when I need them. And you gain a life, so it helps give you a little bit of a buffer. So this flavor text says, so long as the halo keeps flowing, the festivities never end. As we can see, I mean, this is pretty wild. I think in the story, this art was used to represent the crescendo, which is like the New Year's celebration in New Capenna. The Cabaretti are responsible for running it. It's a wild time. And yeah, I can see that. We have fireworks up here, people all over the place. There's a stage and a dance floor, and yeah, looks like a good time. Crash the party. 5 and a green for an instant. Create a tapped 4/4 green rhino creature token for each tapped creature you control. So, unless you have other ways that you're tapping your creatures, which you totally can, this is probably going to happen after you attack, and probably, like, on the previous player's end step, because then you can get your rhinos, ideally before anyone has time to deal with it, but you would be leaving up a lot of mana, so it would look kind of suspicious, but I don't know, if you've got treasure tokens, you can make stuff work. I know this deck doesn't make as many treasure tokens per se, but again, you can adjust these decks. I highly recommend it. Yeah, you can do some fun stuff with this. And then you untap with, you've doubled your creature count, probably, if you tapped everybody down. And also, you've got 4/4 green rhinos, which is great. The profits from that night barely paid for the damages. Oh, snap. Oh, that sucks. So these people show up, they're crashing the party. I can't tell if these guys are happy. It looks like kind of a Cheers sort of vibe where everyone knows your name, you know? But the bartender looks vaguely panicked, and that's probably because this guy just picked up this bottle and started going for it. Chug chug, I guess. And it did not go well. Now, the funny part about this is that he's a rhino, right? A Rox. And he's crashing the party, because rhinos tend to just kind of trample into things. And I think that's nice flavor. Alright. False Floor. It's not colorless, right? It's not technically colorless mana, it's there's another word for it. I can never remember what it is because everyone just says colorless, but there's technically a difference. Whatever. I'm calling it colorless, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean. Alright. For an artifact. Now this is a weird one. I read this earlier. It's very strange. False Floor enters the battlefield tapped. Creatures enter the battlefield tapped. You can pay 2 and tap and exile False Floor to exile all untapped creatures. Activate only as a sorcery. So I suppose, I guess, okay, so this comes in tapped, everything that comes in after it enters tapped, then you'd have to wait, it has to wait a turn to activate, and then their creatures, you can't exile them until it gets back to them because they're gonna, it's a strange one. It works, but it's really not it's not my favorite thing in the world. It does exile, I'll say that, but you can only activate it as a sorcery anyway, so you have to wait till it gets back to you, at which point they're gonna know, you just have threat of activation, but not even on anyone's turn. It's gotta be your turn. So, it's fine, I guess. It looks like these guys were just having a grand old time, and then the floor just fell out underneath them, so that's not fun. And Jetmir says, that performance was truly the pits. Badum-tsh. Oh, man. I guess if they don't like your performance in the Cabaretti, you just drop into an abyss. So, yeah, be on point, I guess. I'm not a fan of the card. I think it's weird. I'm sure, I don't know, you could always untap it, I suppose, because there are ways to untap target artifact, and that would really probably be the way to do it. It's just kind of strange. Alright, and you only have one shot at it. You have to exile that to exile them. Anyway. Grand Crescendo. Now this gives me some Rockettes vibes. Like, 100%. It is X white white for an instant. Create X 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Fantastic. So they would step in and defend. And actually, interestingly enough, I know we're not in the brokers right now, but these kind of look like shields, right? And so that's maybe where the indestructible is coming from. But yeah, these people jump out and they defend from whatever's happening, whatever's coming. You can get as many as your mana can buy, basically. And ideally, they then jump in and block stuff, and they keep them from getting to you, and they don't even die because they're indestructible. It's wonderful. The roar of applause drowned out the melee raging in the lobby. Oh dear. Oh, so there's a fight going on, but no one can hear it because this was just such a fantastic performance. Not to mention the fireworks. I mean, that's also probably drowning out some of the fight. So, yeah, yep, it's very pretty. I like the art. I would be applauding too. Indulge. Okay, right. So this is one of those cards. I don't know if the style came out in Amonkhet. But that's where I remember first hearing about them or seeing them. So the way that these work is you have the main card, in this case Indulge, which is a sorcery, and it is 2 and a red. Whenever a creature you control attacks this turn, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token that's tapped and attacking. So that actually makes sense because they're indulging. I mean, look at this vat of Halo. That's just, it's too much. There's too much going on here. And so these people are just having a ball, and so is this guy. And so they're going in and they're bringing more people and everybody's partying and it's just crazy. And then, so the way you read this is indulge to excess. And there was another series of cards like this that were just in order, like next to each other, both of them right side up. And that would be read as like, well, in the case of this one, indulge and excess. So it's either and or to when it's one that's right side up and then the other one is turned. So then excess is the aftermath, and that can be cast only from your graveyard and then you exile this whole card. Okay? I think the and cards, you could cast them either one or the other or at the same time. I'm pretty sure. So excess, oh no, they broke the oh no. This guy dropped the glass and there's just Halo everywhere. Does he even realize this is a precious commodity? Absolute and total klutz. He is never welcome back to the club ever after this. Seriously. Not even worth it. He probably paid for it, but not worth it. Nope. And if he couldn't pay for that, then they're gonna kick him out anyway, so. Or worse. So excess is 1 and a red for a sorcery. Again, you can only cast it from your graveyard, and then it gets exiled. Create a treasure token for each creature you controlled that dealt combat damage to a player this turn. Okay, so this is like, you could do it some other time, but it's even better if you can do this in the same turn. So you play Indulge, and then you swing out, and you make, for each of those, a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token that's tapped and attacking. Ideally, you're attacking an opponent with not too many creatures on the field. They're gonna see this coming, so I guess, you know, because they're both sorcery speed, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is, it would have to be played before the attack phase anyway in order to trigger, so what are you gonna do? And then, hopefully a bunch of those hit, so then you play Aftermath on your second main phase, and you make a treasure token for each creature you controlled that dealt combat damage to a player this turn. So you get a bunch of bonus creatures, ideally a decent number of them get in. You then cast excess, and you get a treasure token for each one that hit the player. So it's 5 mana. If you want, it's either 3 now and 2 later, or it's 5 in 1 turn. But if you're gonna do that, you want to make sure that you've got enough, that you have enough creatures going in. Or, I mean, you could do this with flyers, I suppose. There aren't too many of those in this deck, I don't think. But this could fit into other decks that have flyers going on, and then it's like, you're probably going to get in for a bunch of damage, or a bunch of hits, actually, because it's individual hits. It's not even the amount of damage. I know, the Halo, no! Truly a tragedy. I feel bad about spilling a drop of gasoline on the, like, that's not in the tank, right? Because I know that's a precious commodity right now. It kind of has been for a few years, and I always feel bad about it. I cannot imagine dropping an entire jar of Halo on New Capenna. I mean, just leave. You might as well just get out of the city. Like, you're not invited to any more parties ever. Sorry. So, yeah. Anyway, the art works. I mean, it's good, and I can see some utility here, but yeah. Moving along, so we spent too long on this. Alright, Killer Service. Now, I did see a bit of this when I was putting the slideshow together. 2 and a green for an enchantment. When Killer Service enters the battlefield, create a number of food tokens equal to the number of opponents you have. So, typically, I mean, I guess depending on when you draw it, this is probably going to be 3. So you're probably getting, we'll say 2, just to be safe. We'll say 2. You get 2 food tokens. A food token is an artifact with 2, tap, sacrifice this artifact, you gain 3 life. Great, we like it. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay 2 and sacrifice a token. Doesn't have to be a food token, a token. If you do, create a 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token. So great. If you're sacking the food tokens, then the rhinos are eating the food, and they're coming to show up to eat the food. And if you're sacking someone else, then maybe they fought them. But in the art, we've got this waiter with a dagger strapped to the underside of a tray, right? Now that seems risky to me because he's definitely carrying this tray higher than these people's heads. And this guy even looks like maybe he saw something. Like he's looking back over his shoulder like, wait, what? Did I just... And this waiter's just like, yeah, don't worry about it. Keep going. But it is funny because he's serving and he's got a dagger, so it's Killer Service. I guess the food relates to the fact that he's a waiter, and the sacrifice is maybe the dagger. That's fine. It's a funny concept all on its own, and so, yeah, I'm willing to just let it be. And I like that you can sacrifice any tokens. You just pay 2 and sacrifice a token, and goodness knows this deck is making like 1,000 1/1s, right? So you can just pay 2 to turn a 1/1 into a 4/4. Or even a treasure token. You can pay 2 and turn a token into that. You can, if you don't need to gain the 3 life, pay 2 and turn some food into a warrior, a 4/4 warrior token. I think that's great. Many, many ways to use these tokens, and this is one of them. Life of the party, 3 and a red for a 0/1 elemental with first strike, trample, and haste. Whenever life of the party attacks, it gets +X+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So again, go wide, you're going to have a good time. Now granted, it is a 1 toughness, so we'll see. When life of the party enters the battlefield, if it's not a token, each opponent creates a token that's a copy of it. The tokens are goaded for the rest of the game. So again, they attack each combat if able, and attack a player other than you if able. So basically, this thing comes in, and each opponent gets a copy of it. They make a token of it. And it's only if it's not a token. So when they get their token, it doesn't just like keep going. And that's why they had to say if it's not a token, because otherwise you could just, I'm pretty sure you would just get infinite lives of the party, assuming that you had at least 1 opponent, which is the only time you're going to be playing this. Lives of the party, sorry, or life of the parties. I don't know what the plural would be. We have to figure that out. So they each have first strike, trample, and haste. And when they attack, they get plus X plus 0 till end of turn, where X is the number of creatures. Now, if they have their own copy, I believe it keys off of their own creatures. So if they didn't have any creatures, it would just be a 0/1. And like Y at that point, unless you just want it to die. But each of the token copies are goaded for the rest of the game. So they have to attack each combat if able, and they have to attack someone other than you. So that's kind of a nice little, here you go. But again, they're 1 toughness, and there's not really a way to, I mean, I don't think your opponents are going to pump them. Maybe. But they're probably not going to last very long. But hey, it gets some damage going in other places that aren't you, and you can keep yours. And if you can figure out a way to pump yours, the toughness on your life of the party, then it'll stick around, and you can just have a really cool little person going here. And yeah, I mean, look, I love that it's an elemental, but it's a party elemental. It is the life of the party. So you've got this swirling vortex of halo vapors and gems and coins, and it looks it's got a lot of pizzazz. I like it a lot. That's really, really pretty and creative art. All right. And of course, it would do better the more creatures that were out. All right, so we have Master of Ceremonies. 3 and a white for a 3/4 Rhino Druid. It looks like he's raising a toast. Making a toast. Raising a glass, making a toast. There we go. Get the phrases right. He also has horn decor. That's kind of cool. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent chooses money, friends, or secrets. So like I said, this Cabaretti Cacophony wants to do tokeny things, and they want to share and or goad with your opponents, or goad your opponent's creatures. So each opponent chooses money, friends, or secrets. Excuse me. For each player who chose money, you and that player each create a treasure token. For each player who chose friends, you and that player each create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. For each player who chose secrets, you and that player each draw a card. Very nice. So your opponents can pick what they want, but you also get one of those things. And they have to pick. They don't get to say, oh, I don't want to give you anything. They have to pick which one they want. Probably which one they want to have, but it might just be which one they want you to have the most. I.e. which 2 they least want you to have. They're going to pick the other. So yeah, the Master of Ceremonies with the toast all around, it shows that surrounded by people, we're all sharing things, and this guy's running things. So he's getting the benefits and managing. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. I think it's a really cool card. Politics isn't it's such an interesting element of Commander. Yeah, it's fun. And these glasses are something else. I don't think that can hold very much Halo, but it's definitely wait a minute, this person's either. They've got like nothing in there. This person is living the life. That is a proper glass. Awesome. Prosperous Partnership. Now this is hilarious because I'm like pretty sure they're getting engaged, but they're calling it a prosperous partnership. Like, oh, this is gonna be really good for both of us. It doesn't seem, I guess you can prosper in ways that aren't just money, but, or maybe not. I mean, it definitely looks like an engagement to me, or even a wedding, I suppose. But yeah, it could just be a deal being made, but I don't think that's the idea. It's an enchantment for 1 red-white. When Prosperous Partnership enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Tap 3 untapped creatures you control. Create a treasure token. So it's interesting to me that it gives you 2, and it is a partnership, but it requires 3 to make the treasure token. That bugs me a little bit. It's just, I mean, unless maybe, I don't know, maybe it's the minister is the 3rd person, or maybe it's each person and their parents, like, I don't know, but the fact that it gives you 2 and you need 3 and it's a partnership alone, It is prosperous because you get a treasure token out of it, but it's not a partnership per se. Like, that's a group. It's a group project. But in any case, yeah, okay. And now we read the, now I get it. This is like a Bonnie and Clyde. Okay. Partners in love, partners in life, and partners in crime. Well, that's actually very cute. If this weren't taking it so literally, I would think that was very sweet, and I would want that slogan somewhere. Again, I don't get the 3. Why is it 3? We were doing great. It should be tap 2 untapped creatures you control. It would even be fine if when it entered you got 2 tapped creature tokens, just so it wasn't like you get a treasure token immediately, right? Whatever. I'm just griping at this point. It's still a really interesting card. You can just use your creatures to make treasure, but you're tapping down 3 at a time. That was just kind of a lot. That's okay. The art's very pretty though. And now we know that is definitely a ring that he's given her. Very sweet. The lighting is really nice because you got this light coming from the ring, and it kind of, I think it's really well done. Okay. Rose Room Treasurer. 3 and a red for a 4/3 Ogre Warrior. It has Alliance. Now that is a Cabaretti keyword. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, create a treasure token if this is the first or second time this ability has resolved this turn. Otherwise, you may pay X. When you do, Rose Room Treasurer deals X damage to any target. So that's kind of interesting. If you can manage to, so if the first creature enters the battlefield under your control, you make a treasure token. Second creature enters, you make a treasure token. If you manage to get a third creature in that same turn to enter the battlefield under your control, you can pay X. Now at that point, depending on how you're getting these creatures to enter, that may just be the 2 treasure tokens that you just made from the other 2, but in that case you can still pay that, and then Rose Room Treasurer deals 2 damage to any target, so that can hit the face too. So if you've been making treasure, and you can consistently get 3 creatures out in a turn, which is tough, but you can do it, then it's just shooting things. Not fantastic utility as far as I can tell, because I mean getting 3 creatures out in a turn. But again, if you're going the white weenie strategy or the token generation strategy, if you have an Anointed Procession out, well now we're talking. I don't actually know if those enter at the same time though. I don't think so. I think it, like, something enters and then you make a copy, so I think that would still work. And you'd get double the treasure. This goes in this deck. Anyway. Yeah, it's fun to do these because I just start plotting. I have 3 commander decks at this point, and I have ideas for about 5 more. I say I'm working on them, which just means I'm making lists upon lists upon lists on my phone. And I keep coming up with new ideas every day for more decks, and I just need to stop. I need to slow down. I can't. Alright. As far as art goes, because we don't have any flavor text, the Rose Room Treasure, I guess, is dealing with people and getting treasure. The dealing the damage makes slightly less sense, unless he's having to beat people out of the Rose Room. He does have a weapon up here, so there's that. But that's alright. Rumor Gatherer. Now we saw this one in the original set. It's one they decided to put in here. It is the creature, it's the card that is me. 1 white for a 2/1 elf wizard with Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, draw a card instead. So it's actually really nice. So you play out a creature, you scry, and then if you play another creature, you can either draw that card you just saw, or just draw a card. And presumably, hopefully, it's better than whatever you saw, because you would have put that on the bottom, right? So, great. If nothing else, you've got that out of the way and you're working through your deck, so. The flavor text says, "It's delightful the things their owners reveal when they think no one is listening." Because she's got all these miniature animals, which must be people's pets, bringing her messages. And this guy, like I think I said, this bear over here is bringing a whole diary. He's like, no, none of these little letters. I'll do you one better. And he's got a whole book here. But yeah, that's totally me. Like with my army of miniature creatures feeding me information. The only issue would be that I wouldn't want to send them back to their owners at the end. Yeah, I'd probably just keep them. And then people would be on to me, and so maybe it's better that this isn't actually me. Scepter of Celebration, 2 and a green for an artifact equipment. I believe each of the, so we had the Gavel of the Righteous, and this is the Scepter of Celebration. I think each of the decks has like a rare equipment or a rare artifact or enchantment or something of that nature that has to do with the main leader, the family head, the head of the family. There we go. So this is the Scepter of Celebration. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has trample. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens, equipped for 3. Now 3 is a hefty equip cost. However, +2/+0 and trample is not nothing, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you get that many 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. So again, we're seeing so many creatures being created here. Like these little citizen creature tokens are everywhere in this deck. And you just use them for a bunch of stuff. So, you know, it's a lot to equip. You play it out for 3, you equip it for 3, but then if you can get in and do some good damage, I mean, you could be getting 3, 4, even 5 1/1 green and white creature tokens every one of your turns. So that's not nothing. I mean, you're definitely getting fodder, you're getting blockers. So yeah, I'm not over the moon about it, but it looks pretty good. Especially, as I said, if you have a way to use those tokens, that's something. I mean, it's the art's pretty straightforward. We've got this scepter that appears to be glowing with some kind of enchantment, right? The dealing combat damage to a player is kind of weird, but it does make sense that the scepter would summon more people to it. So, yeah, that part tracks. Seize the Spotlight, 2 and a red for a sorcery. Each opponent chooses Fame or Fortune. So they have to choose. For each player who chose Fame, gain control of a creature that player controls until end of turn. Untap those creatures, and they gain haste until end of turn. Great. Just take a thing. And they don't get to pick which creature you get, so it could go really poorly, like if they have a way not to get creatures or to not allow you somehow, if they can sacrifice something after you choose it. I don't know. Like, there are ways it could go poorly, but ideally you cast this when it's not looking as bad for you. For each player who chose Fortune, you draw a card and create a treasure token. So that's really nice. So they can either give you control of a creature they control until the end of the turn, or they give you a card and a treasure token. So either way, it's not great for them. And therefore, I really like this card. So you see, it's really interesting. So I think she's projecting herself, this image of herself being a famous rich person, because she's clearly not there, but I don't really know how that incorporates. I'm not really sure, but it is some very interesting art, I have to say. It's very, very cool. Yeah, unique. I like it. It's, again, not sure how it ties into things, unless she's performing a spell that is making her rich and famous. Now that is, then she would be seizing the spotlight just by force, and it would make sense because she would be gaining control of a creature, and she'd be gaining wealth and power, which would be the card and the treasure token. So that I could see. So if that's what's going on, then fantastic. Sizzling Soloist. This is one that was in the main set as well. I want to say it's a trombone. My husband would be like, When he watches this, he's gonna tell me. He's gonna tell me what it was, but I'm pretty sure it's a trombone. Fairly certain. I hope I'm not too wrong about that. Either way, it's a brass instrument, I can tell you that much. So this is 3 in a red for a 3/2 human citizen with Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, gain target creature and opponent controls can't block this turn. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, that creature attacks during its controller's next combat phase if able. So again, we're sort of goading, I guess, except that they could attack you. Which is not great. But that creature can't block, and then it has to swing back. I'm not sure how great that is unless you know that you're going to have a blocker, in which case they're either going to attack into your really good blocker, if they don't remove it, or they're going to attack someone else. So either way, things are okay for you. And you're probably going to get in for some bonus damage because their creature can't attack, or can't block this turn. So fine. As far as the art goes, I guess you could say that he's enchanting them with the music, that it's distracted and therefore can't block. And the fact that it has to attack later, I hope it's not because he was playing badly. I don't think that's the case. Yeah, I hope not. It doesn't make as much sense, but it's really cool art, so I'm willing to overlook it. I mean, it just looks really sick. Vivian Stampede. 4 green for a sorcery. Each creature you control gains Vigilance, Trample, and Melee until end of turn. Whenever a creature with melee attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each opponent you attacked this combat. Right, I believe melee was a Commander Legends mechanic. So this encourages you to spread out your attack because each creature you control is going to get, assuming you have 3 opponents, let's just say that. Just say 3. Assume you have 3 opponents, they're going to get, if you attack all 3 of your opponents, each creature you control is going to get +3/+3 Vigilance and Trample, which is wild, right? If you only attack 1 opponent, they get +1/+1. Which isn't as good, but I mean, sometimes that's fine. Sometimes that's what you want to do. Because you just need to finish someone off. At the beginning of the next phase this turn, draw a card for each player who has dealt combat damage this turn. So, again, even more so encouraging you to go for multiple people, because if they get Trample, they're probably going to get, like, Trample and +3/+3 is probably getting something through, and if you hit all 3 players, then you draw 3 cards. At the beginning of the next main phase, so you get to draw 3 cards, then go into your second main phase. Now, granted, you've already spent 6 mana, so you're probably not doing a lot, but hey, if you draw any instants, you can draw answers for later problems, except that you need the mana still. Card draw's good regardless, even if you can't use it immediately. And, I mean, this is in green, so presumably you're ramping, so maybe you've got more than 6 mana. It's Commander. You have more than 6 mana. Certainly by the time it would even be worth it to play this card, because if you only have 1 creature out, like, why? But then you maybe would have spent that mana getting those other creatures out. I don't know. In any case, the attacking multiple players makes slightly less sense, but the Vigilance, Trample, and I guess going for a bunch of people in the card draw kind of makes sense, because you've got this entire stampede of creatures coming in. So sure. Vivian is my favorite, and this is the work of her arc bow, and I can see it. This might be a person, like, trying to dive up. Oh yeah, I think this is a person, and these are hands, I'm pretty sure, and they're trying to get out of the way. But either way, I like it. Interesting stuff.